Hey guys, Yusheng here. Welcome to another StarCraft 2 lesson. Today we're going to be checking out some games from the DreamHack Atlanta replay pack, which ESL has dropped recently. Also, if you guys want to download this, you can come over to my announcements in SquadShang, and the link is here for you guys to download these replays for yourself. But today I have some pretty sweet games for you guys. I've been trying to do this lesson format for a while, where we go through like different levels of a specific defense. And I found one guy in this tournament, the infamous Poppy Joe, who basically does this build every single game. And the build we're going to be looking at is a Proxy Robo. So I've got 4 different levels. We've got 2 games against Riser. They actually played a ton of games, so Poppy Joe Proxy Roboed him twice. And then we've got a game against Shutdown and a game against Creator. So Creator obviously going to be the highest level here. Okay, so this is their first encounter. I think this is the first game they played out of their series. And like I said, Poppy Joe is just Proxy Robo aficionado. I played him on ladder and he does this almost all the time. So we're going to check out this Proxy Robo defense here from Riser. But this is their first meeting. So he has no idea, I don't think, about what Poppy Joe tends to do. But as you can see here, we're placing our second pylon kind of out on the map. It's kind of a weird proxy, if we can even call it that, because obviously proxy is supposed to be proximity to the opponent. But here we are on Poppy Joe's side of the map. It's like barely closer than his main base. But the benefit, of course, is that Riser doesn't know, what sort of tech it is. If you place it in the main at this time, then Riser can see it and make some, finer tuned adjustments. So the problem here is that Riser might suspect it could be Stargate, or it could be, DTs. And then, of course, it can also be the Proxy Robo. So he's looking around for it. Let's go to his vision, actually, so we can see how he goes about defending this. We can also see he's proxied a pylon in the top. I'm not exactly sure what the idea was here. Maybe for a depths, though, later on. Or just to hide a pylon, I guess, is possible as well. But he comes up here. He sees some stalkers. And that's kind of all he sees. So he sends the Hallucinated Phoenix. He's opening up with like a pretty safe triple stalker sentry build. And we're going to see him drop a shield battery. And the reason he's dropping the shield battery again is because Proxy Stargate is completely viable here. It definitely could have been that. Now he's seen the Robo with the Phoenix. Immediate cancel, right? We don't need that anymore. It's not a Proxy Stargate. And so we're going to focus all of our defense here on the front. And yeah, so the way Riser's chosen to try and defend this is by going for 3 gateways. So I haven't seen this defense before. I feel like this is a little bit weak, I guess, because you're kind of banking on the extra economy at the natural. And eventually you're going to have a much weaker army. So I'm not exactly sure what the idea is here. But he's going for this gateway defense. He's making a lot of sentry, a lot of stalker. And he's got a lot of initial power here with all these shield batteries. So Poppy Joe doesn't really push the front. Instead, he's kind of abusing this War Prism mobility, right? Coming into the main, threatening to take down that pylon that's powering all of Riser's production. And this is kind of one of the weaknesses of, placing your gateways over here, right? Of course, it's standard, but it's actually difficult to run back and forth and defend this location. So Poppy Joe's kind of abusing that. But on the other hand, we do have a pretty... we have more economy. We have 7 probes at a natural here that Poppy Joe doesn't have because he's still on 1 base. So we do have extra money. And okay, so that pylon over there, we actually just saw him warp in some adepts. So that was the idea with that pylon. I guess it was so far in the north just so it doesn't get picked off, which makes a lot of sense. Another stalker going down. So I mean, Poppy Joe's getting a lot of value with these Immortals. I think he's picked off like 3 Stalkers already. Now, we do have these Adepts coming in, so if these could go in and do some damage, we can maybe start to push this back. But the problem is that Poppy Joe is an aficionado, and those Adepts didn't get in. I think that was a big mistake, actually, just moving away from the shield batteries. I think oftentimes what happens, like, even in GM, is you're under pressure for this long, and you feel like you're kind of winning because you have the natural expansion mining. And so what you do is you're like, okay, I can finally break this and relieve the pressure, right? But oftentimes you kind of want to keep that pressure, because if you're the one to break the pressure, then it's at a disadvantage for you, right? Like he's moving out here, but he's not using his shield batteries. However, I think what was also happening is he knew he didn't have any tech buildings. And so he felt like he needed to do something, because eventually Poppy Joe is going to have like 4 Immortals, and his army is just disgustingly good. And, you know, no amount of gateway units is going to be able to deal with that at some point. So I think that was also part of the reason he's kind of pushing out here. But yeah, at this point, we're going Twilight Council, I think, for Blink. But of course, Blink Stalkers as well, not really great against Immortals. So I feel like we kind of got stuck in, you know, the high pressure situation here of the tournament. And yeah, the game is starting to get uncomfortable, to say the least. I think another mistake that Riser made here is he's got way too many workers. We're on like 16 workers of the natural against a 1 base opponent. And so our army supply is really hurting because of that. But maybe if he gets Blink, he can make some plays. At least he can not get Force Fielded, I suppose. Also, I think another weakness of this gateway setup is that Poppy Joe could go Disruptors. And personally, I feel like if you go the gateway style and he goes Disruptors, you get in a lot of trouble really quick. So that could be a dangerous problem here as well. But yeah, as you can see, like once Poppy Joe got 3-4 Immortals, his army is just kind of untouchable by this gateway man style. And so Poppy Joe is going to break through here. And yeah, there's kind of nothing that we can do. I think we overprobed. I think we kind of chose a poor tech choice here. And yeah, I mean, this is a tournament. Keep in mind, like, Riser is a really strong player, but this is a tournament, so there's a lot of pressure. You're in like a different situation, and so Poppy Joe is gonna take him down. But we have a second encounter here. Riser is maybe gonna get some redemption now that he knows what's going on. So let me fast forward to the Proxy Robo setup. Riser's up here in the top left, and of course we have Poppy Joe, the Proxy Immortal Fiend, in the bottom right. And I should have pointed out last game, by the way, that this pylon is missing pretty early. You need the second pylon to make these first 2 gateway units, and so that's how Riser knows that some sort of proxy is happening. And okay, this game we spot the Proxy Robo much faster, right? Immediately when you see there's no second pylon, you can send this probe around, and we find the Proxy Robo. So what are we gonna do? Okay, so this game we're gonna choose an immediate Stargate. So we went double Stalker, and then we went Stargate, and then we went 2 more Stalker. And yeah, this response I like a lot more, of course, because we're actually making a tech structure that counters the Robo. Sometimes you actually don't need to make a building that counters it directly. Like sometimes you can use tactics to overcome that. But yeah, in this kind of situation, I think it's better to counter the Robo straight up, or at least match it. So we go 4 Stalker, and this game starts off pretty nicely because we're able to pick off the Stalker, I believe. Yeah, and then we have a Robo, or sorry, a Stargate. So this Void Ray is coming in. Some nice micro to Riser as well, shooting at the Immortal 1 time there. So now the Immortal can't really pressure him immediately because there's no barrier. And yeah, once this Void Ray pops out, it's going to be a little bit different. That Void Ray carries a lot of power. So one of the other differences with this setup is we don't have the natural. So it's quite a bit different actually, because in the last game, Riser could kind of sit back and wait for Poppy Joe to push into him. Like Poppy Joe had to push in. But this game is different because Riser doesn't have the natural, and so there's actually no reason that Poppy Joe has to go and attack immediately. Instead, it's going to be a much more like even setup. Like Riser's not going to die for sure, but he also can't really, you know, he's not going to have a lead by sitting back. It's only going to be even. I guess he does have a lead in a sense that he's got the upper hand on the tech choice. Like knowing your opponent when Robo and going Void Rays, you do have the upper hand there. But as we can see on the production tab over here, Poppy Joe is going for the Twilight Council, presumably for a blink, and trying to counter the Void Ray somewhat with that. However, neither player has an expansion. So just much more of like a solid approach. Like you don't get any advantages, but you also don't die, and you kind of just progress the game. And I was watching this replay earlier, and I was wondering maybe it would have been a little bit stronger to go like one Void Ray potentially into Oracles, or even just like one Oracle and then back into Void Rays potentially. I don't know. It felt like this was the right choice when I saw the Stargate immediately, and then it feels like it's kind of losing a lot of its power over time. Like I thought he was gonna just crush the Robo attack with like 2 Void Rays, but we can see it's kind of just evening out. Like, okay, finally we have 3 Void Rays, so it's like Poppy Joe can't really fight, but he still kind of can because he's got so many stalkers. Yeah, I probably shouldn't have fought into the overcharge Void Rays there. But he does have Blink almost finished, and I think if he didn't even go for Blink, he would have had more army there, and it probably still would have been like a pretty even trade. So I don't know if I'm feeling the Void Rays anymore. Maybe there's some tweaks we can make to this kind of setup to make it work. I don't know. He does have high ground vision here, and he is starting to make some oracles, which I think have like a little bit more utility and are pretty nice. I also think he had a lot of potential power in this attack that he didn't quite take advantage of. Like, I think he could have killed these gates on the high ground maybe. But maybe he was scared of the blink potentially coming in. Maybe he just wanted to play it safe because this is a pretty high stakes tournament, I guess. But either way, he backs up, takes his expansion, and he's going for blink himself. And that stasis did pay off, so he's kind of buying some time here. And we'll see how he does this game. I think you got to really be careful not to over probe in these situations. Like, you want to have a bigger economy for sure to take advantage of your Nexus, but you don't want to have so much that it's kind of a liability and you're way lower in the unit count. So there's definitely a balance you want to strike. So he's fighting out here because he's got the high ground vision. And also because you want to be a little bit careful in Riser's position about the potential of the War Prism drop. So I think it's okay to stay here for a little bit. But I think you do want to kind of pull back to your shield batteries and fight there if you can eventually. Because of course you've got the overcharge and a pretty large defender's advantage. Same kind of thing this game though. I think Riser is overdoing the probes. Like, his natural is literally full. And if I go to the everyone cam real quick, you'll see that Poppy Joe is still on 1 base. So I don't think you need this much of a lead. I think he's probably going to defend this game. But yeah, I think it's just a bit too much of a lead. It makes it really hard to defend when it should be a lot easier, I think. So now we have kind of these War Prism, annoying shenanigans. But unlike the last game, we got the Void Rays. So the War Prism has to be incredibly careful here. And we finally have our own blink. So I think at this time in the game, Riser is actually in like a pretty massive advantage. Like the Immortals aren't really in play anymore. And although the Void Rays are not like amazing, they're kind of preventing a lot of like crazy shenanigans with the War Prism. So they're kind of doing their job okay-ish. And we have Blink, so our army's kind of competing. And mainly we have a massive economy. Way bigger than Poppy Joe's. So now he scouts the Nexus of Poppy Joe. And like from this position here, when you scout the Nexus, you can immediately start playing a pretty greedy macro game if you want. Or you could potentially set up for some sort of counterattack, because when your opponent takes their expansion, they're kind of equalizing the resources invested in the economy. So you no longer have to play kind of defensive and overly safe. You can start either getting out on the map, or you can start expanding and trying to get even more ahead on the eco front. So now that Riser has secured his like really nice lead, he's also going for a robo, which is pretty important actually in PvP. Like whenever you have a good position, you should definitely go for observers. It is a little bit slow here, but I think it's a good thing that he's not rushing that robo too fast, because you can also get under a lot of pressure from the all-in. So like as soon as you see your opponent expand in PvP, that's generally when you go for detection here, when you're relieved of that pressure. And usually you would have an Oracle in this position as well, instead of the robo so fast, because you have the Stargate. So that's naturally a bit of a smoother transition before the robo. But I think his Oracle got picked off or something. Either way though. And then also from Poppy Joe's position, we should point out that going for the Dark Shrine like that is actually pretty strong if you already have a War Prism. So like if you ever open a robo and you're just stuck with the War Prism, the DT transition is quite a bit stronger, so you should probably go for that. Obviously this game he's a little bit too behind from the opening, from the Void Ray counterattack, and Riser's able to come across the map and just kill him. Could have also taken an expansion, but yeah, I mean if you're this far ahead, I think the Blink Stalker attack is a bit stronger. And Poppy Joe taps out. So Poppy Joe did go on to win this series, by the way, but he couldn't play the Immortal, Proxy Immortal all in anymore, because yeah, this defense was a lot cleaner. And for level 3, we have a game against Shutdown. So Shutdown goes for a much more crazy defense. Way more creative. Not the defense I would go for sure. But let's see how Shutdown goes for it. So standard openings. Slow down here. I'm trying to find the probe. I think this is the first time the probe went across. And we see a pylon starting, but it's not the correct time for the second pylon. This is more of a third pylon timing. And the reason I know that, you don't need to like memorize the game time. You just need to know that your stalkers have already started. And in order for that to happen, you need a second pylon. So there has to be another pylon out on the map. You can see Shutdown's kind of poking around for it here. And we can also see these stalkers moving across the map. He should definitely try and find the pylon, I think. But he's not really going for that, surprisingly. So he's doing a lot less scouting than Riser did. But he is going for this kind of 4 stalker pressure, so he is going to get some info of that. And he is going to get a shield battery in his main. So he is covering all the bases. Like if this was Proxy Stargate, then he would have the shield battery in time. So he's not going to die against that. And also, he's going for a really fast robo. So he's not really under massive threat from Proxy Robo either. But I feel like this isn't a very ambitious defense. It's kind of like, again, it's kind of trying to get like into an even position in the mid game, you're not really playing for too much of an advantage. Also, he's making like a ton of workers, which is interesting. I wonder what he's gonna do with those extra workers, because you're not really gaining any extra money after about 24 or so, and even those ones aren't mining super efficiently. So he's just defending here. He went for a War Prism first. So he's going to be down in Immortal, but the idea is he gets a little bit of counter pressure. You don't want to like just make Immortals here for sure, because then you get stuck in your main base with no counterplay and your opponent can just take an expansion. And then even though you have like a similarly good army, you can't really go down the ramp. It's just too advantageous for the opponent. So instead of playing like that kind of poor setup, he's going to go for the War Prism counter attack, which makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, he's got to give up that gateway. There's no way he can really contest this army too much. He's just kind of trying to buy time for the War Prism to get some counter damage in. So it does okay. Poppy Joe is definitely ready for that. And here, I think, is where we start to see Shutdown's crazy plan come into play. Going for a Proxy Nexus. I've never tried this actually, but I feel like this is fairly strong if your opponent isn't aware that this is a plan. So he kind of makes Poppy Joe feel like he's winning. And you could tell that this was Shutdown's plan the whole time, because he made all those extra probes, which he wouldn't normally make. So he's really banking on the fact that that Poppy Joe doesn't find this, I think. But even if he does find it, you can always, you know, come down to the low ground once he goes to kill it, and then you've kind of solved the problem of being stuck in your base. So I feel like this plan actually has a lot of potential. Could be good. This War Prism is also super annoying. I think Poppy Joe actually went all the way back to his base, so Shutdown is able to come down onto the low ground. And very importantly, if you're going to play a plan like this, oh, he's trying to push the War Prism away here. Very smart. So what I was going to say is it's very important with a plan like this that you actually take another base, because if you don't take this natural expansion, your opponent's going to know immediately that that you're going for some sort of hidden base. So really important to take a third base as well. And then you can always just give it up if you have to, but you want to just pretend you're taking your base really slowly here. So now we have a pretty massive advantage. I believe Poppy Joe is still all in here. So again, we don't need to defend the natural here, but of course we can. It's not super disadvantageous to fight in this choke point. And I think at this point, the game is starting to become pretty unwinnable for Poppy. Like, he never actually found that expansion. And since Shutdown went for Immortals, he has a pretty similarly good army. So it's starting to not look very good at all. One thing Poppy Joe does have is Blink, but again, I think the Blink is actually not a good choice here. I think it was good against Riser when he went for Stargate, but I think in this position, if you're playing up against someone who has a ground army that has, you know, basically no counter to Disruptor, you should be going for those. Or potentially even like Void Ray or something. Like, you need to go for something that's strong against ground armies. The Blink here is just, yeah, it's not going to win you the fight against this 4 Immortal army either. I think the idea was to shut down the Warp Prism, but it's just, yeah, I don't think it's super solid overall. So yeah, I think we can maybe stop watching this game. It's kind of over. We're just kind of waiting for Poppy Joe to realize, because Shutdown just has a much stronger army here. It's not really killable, and then also Shutdown is on 3 bases to 1. So unless he loses this fight majorly, it's pretty much game over. And yeah, Poppy Joe tries this tactic. Maybe that's what he was playing off of with the Blink, but Shutdown's able to get a decent position, good enough. snipe the Prism. And yeah, all this fight is not perfect. He just has way too much for Poppy Joe to deal with. And Poppy Joe taps out. And now we have the main course, I guess we can call it. We have Poppy Joe against a pro gamer. One of the top Protoss. GSL finalist, Creator. I think this is the best game, or best matchup to watch if you want to learn, is to watch a pro gamer kind of beat up on an amateur. Because they always have the like maximum clean defenses. They don't play for equality like pretty much everybody else has been playing for, except for Riser in the first game, which he didn't win. We saw Shutdown play for kind of equality, and we saw Riser in game 2 play for equality with the Void Race. And yeah, usually when pro gamers defend, they play for advantages. So I'm gonna fast forward here. We can see Poppy Joe predictably going for a Robo again. No surprise there. And Creator's gonna go for a pretty quick expansion. He's playing like the very standard PvP build, which I've done a guide on, which is just double Stalker, double Sentry, expansion. And the idea is just you get like enough units to defend. You also get pretty quick scouting. You know, nothing super great against this build. It's not super amazing against anything either, but it just keeps you safe enough to get a quick expansion. So we're gonna see that expansion go down. And one thing I want to point out in Creator's vision, different to Shutdown specifically, but also Riser, is the amount of scouting we're doing here. Like, pretty much the whole map has been scouted at this point, except for the top. And we also have this probe come back in to Poppy Joe's natural, so we know there's no expansion. So our level of, you know, awareness of what's going on here is just astronomical. There's just no corner of the map that's unscouted. And we obviously find the Robo because of that. And I want to point out, he did go for the shield battery. Same as Riser and Shutdown actually. But now that we know it's Proxy Robo, we can cancel. And we also went for a Robo before we saw the Proxy Robo. So this kind of setup is just like a catch-all. If it was Proxy DT, we'd have this. If it was Proxy Stargate, then we would have the shield battery. We could potentially cancel this and go Twilight, or we could just play for like a Robo push. But regardless of what our opponent was doing in this position, Robo is going to counter everything. So I think this is the best tech choice. We can also see Creators going for quite a few sentries. And this is a pretty big part of the perfect defense, because if the Immortals come into here and you have a lot of Stalker only and you cast the overcharge, they can just run away. But if you go for a lot of sentry, you can trap him, and although he can pick up and leave, you're still going to be able to pick off quite a few units. So I feel like the sentries are a pretty important part of the defense. And this is just an insane level of perfection here. So we warp in the next 2 Stalker in the main, because if Poppy Joe pushes the natural, we have the overcharge and the sentries, and so we can pretty much trade well against anything on that side. And the real problem here is going to be the War Prism. So we can see here that Creator is spreading his Stalkers out for that. And against Riser, we saw Poppy Joe kind of obliterating Stalkers left and right. And here we just see the War Prism is just consistently backing up. Like, it almost seems like Poppy Joe is just not good with the War Prism. But it's actually just Creator is so clutch with this defense. He kind of pulls it back as soon as the War Prism comes in, kind of commits a little bit. And although the Immortals are good against the Stalker, it's just not really too easy to get anything done right now. And also, he's kind of committed to the War Prism in the main, so he can't really push the natural too easily either. So Creator kind of easily pushing that away. And one of the biggest differences here in this setup is that Creator's army is a little bit worse. Like, he only has 1 Immortal to 2, I believe. But it's enough that he's pretty much matching the army like very closely, and he has the expansion. So if Poppy Joe doesn't make a play soon, he's not gonna have a very good he's gonna have the smaller army. And yeah, getting that War Prism kill was just like immediately GG. So I mean, watching these 4 games back to back is just kind of insane. Like the level of defense at the pro level is just astronomically better than everybody else we watched, including Shutdown, who I think had a good idea though. But yeah, I mean, this level of defense is just completely obliterating the build. Like I would never play this build against Creator anymore after seeing this game. So yeah, hopefully you guys like this kind of video. 4 different levels of defenses. I think you guys should go for this one. But yeah, hopefully you enjoy this. Thanks for watching. I will see you guys in the next one.